Hey everybody, and welcome back to Digital Artcast. Thanks for tuning in again for another great episode. I hope you guys all around the world at this point are staying safe. I know a lot of my friends and colleagues are out either marching or taking place in what's going on just now in America and other places around the world. I just hope everybody is looking after themselves and their friends and family. And just again, my thanks for anybody who's tuning in for either the first time or the 15th time. Whatever. Our community is definitely growing. Our Discord and our live streams have been quite successful, so we're getting a kind of bigger audience now. And of course, recently we just passed 2,000 subs. We're heading towards 2.5 at this point. So my thanks again to everybody who's subscribing and checking out the podcast. It really means a lot to me. Today, we've got another amazing guest on, somebody that I had seen previously, their work, but never really reached out to them. But then during the recent IFCC festival that we had online, shout out to Marco. This artist was demoing and doing a kind of lecture at the time, and I kind of tuned in and walked through his process and thought it might be something that's great to share with the rest of the audience. If anybody has any kind of questions about that stream past, or maybe just wants to dive deeper into the process of building and making characters, because I know that he also has a course that is now up with IFCC as well that we can talk about as well. But today we are introducing Mr. Jude Smith, who has kindly given up his time today to come on and talk to us. So, hi Jude.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you again for giving up your time. I know you're probably super busy with work and stuff, so
yeah, no problem.
I appreciate it. And of course, the scheduling conflicts that we've had is always in this podcast. It's almost a curse just being in Scotland sometimes, because I'm just so far from everybody time wise. So it's always difficult. But yeah, I'm glad you had some time to spare. So
yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. So for people who don't maybe know you too well, could you just give a little quick brief rundown on who you are and what you do?
Sure. Yeah, I'm a concept artist in Vancouver. I work for Kabam. I've been working there for 4 years now. I also do some freelance for various studios too. But I've been in the industry for 4 years. I started. I went to the Art Institute in Washington, D.C. That's kind of what sort of led me down this path. I was always very interested in concept art growing up. And my grandmother is a painter, and so at a young age I was introduced into kind of the art world, and played around with painting and stuff like that, and then I went to the Art Institute for 3 years, and I studied media arts and animation. I kind of knew that I wanted to go into concept art. So I tailored my portfolio towards that, and I did really well there. Graduated at the top of my class, and
well done. Yeah.
But I kind of, when I graduated, I kind of knew that my portfolio wasn't really, industry standard yet. So
a
year I really just kind of grinded away at my work, rebuilding my portfolio and working on any projects that were art related to kind of get my foot in the door. And, being from a small town, I didn't really have a lot of connections, and I happened to, just every couple months, just submit my artwork out there to different studios, trying to pick up work. And then, about a year after graduation, Kabam reached out to me, and I had like 10 days to move to Vancouver, and I've been in Vancouver ever since, and it's been great.
How do you find Vancouver and maybe Canada in general, as opposed to being brought up in the States? How do you feel that has been different?
They're pretty similar, honestly. There isn't a lot of a difference. It's very relaxed here. It's nice to also have healthcare, so that's great. Affordable healthcare. So but yeah, no, it's I really like working here. Cool. Vancouver is kind of a much bigger hub in the gaming industry than I realized. I didn't really know much about Vancouver before moving here, but there's a lot there's a lot of great studios here. The animation industry here is huge. Um,
Yeah, I
and
think there's is that the city that has the Sheridan School of Arts?
yes, they're not in Vancouver. I
Right.
can't remember exactly where they are, but yeah, they're one of the more known art schools in Canada.
Yeah, we had when we first started the podcast, one of my co-hosts was a guy called Colin Cyril. I don't know if you know Colin at all.
Mm-mm, I don't believe
So
so.
he's a viz dev artist, but he went to Sheridan and he works at a place now. I think it's George Eliot Animation. But
Okay.
they've done a lot of work with Ubisoft. So he was out from there. But yeah, Vancouver and I think Canada in general seems like a nice place to chill and be an artist. There seems to be a good vibe from a lot of schools out there and also studios. So
Yeah.
it seems like an interesting place. So when you were leaving your concept work and you were kind of aiming your portfolio, uh, did you know specifically at the start you wanted to focus on characters? Like that was your main drive?
Honestly, I was really big into environment design. That's kind of what I wanted to do originally.
Okay, right.
And and eventually, at Kabam, they threw me on characters. So I
Hmm.
started just doing characters on my own, just as like practice, just to kind of hone some of those skills.
Right.
And since then, I don't know, something about it has kind of taken off for me. So I've really just
Yeah.
dove into it, and it kind of allows me to have a little more focus, which I like. But
Right.
yeah, I have some background stuff that I'm in the works that I'm going to get back to eventually here.
Right.
But yeah, it's been, I don't know. It kind of just started off as just practice, and I just kind of took off with it.
Right. Interesting as well, though, because I think I've been the same. I think more environments, more because I feel like it's the no easier. Of course, it's still everything's a difficult job, but like I feel like compared to characters, environments are an easier subject to tackle, if that makes sense.
Oh,
Like they're,
really?
yeah, well, I mean, I feel like there is obviously every form has its own complexity, weapons,
Definitely.
characters, whatever. But I feel characters, there's so much you have to put in, not only research wise, but just of your own personal sacrifice as an artist to make a character because you're almost in fact making a person from nothing. So I feel like when you make an environment because certain things are already there in the world, like bricks, walls, trees, things that fill up the environments. But with characters, sometimes I know every character has two arms and two legs and a head, but I feel like there's almost you're creating a personality as well, and that can itself be can be something that's challenging. I feel more than environment design. I mean, this is just my personal experience, but
Yeah, I definitely. For me, uh, I wanted to learn how to tell a story by just looking at a character.
mm,
So that was kind of the challenge for me,
yeah,
um, where with environment design, you can kind of add specific elements and lighting
hmm,
and things to kind of dictate what the story is.
right,
But with a character, um, everything's narrowed down to just that design. So I
right,
was like, how can I tell a story by just looking at a character? And so
yeah, yeah,
I've put a lot of focus into that.
right,
And yeah, actually, I went to a massive black workshop a couple years ago, and that
right.
kind of it was really helpful talk listening to like Marco Dervick and Thomas
Oh,
Schultz.
the Six More Vodka guys.
Yeah, yeah, just
Yeah,
listening
of
to them
course.
talk about how
Oh,
you
Marco's
know
like I never even knew how big of a superstar Marco was before like I even really looked at the Six More Vodka. But his whole like even his past like 10 years ago, like working for Marvel and doing so much stuff like for
yeah.
film and the
Mhm.
comic stuff. Oh my god, the guy's like an absolute living legend. And I know I was like so ignorant to it for so long because I knew Six More Vodka were an amazing studio. Like I always knew
Mhm.
people were always talking about them. But then when I started to dig into Marco's past and like how like things he had done, I was like, oh my god, this guy's had some history.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, so I mean, do you feel like I mean, for me personally, I think characters for me are the biggest part of storytelling because you can have environments, but if they're not filled with characters, then there isn't much storytelling there. Or there's not a lot of
sure.
narrative in a sense. So do you feel like that's something you feel that connects you to characters, is that you want to tell stories as a human?
Definitely.
Right.
Um, the big thing that has helped boost my work lately in the past, I would say like 2 years, um, has 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 been uh, figuring a story out to tell and basing my work off of a story. So
Right.
all these recent characters that I've been working on, I have this story that I've written down kind of loosely.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know what I'll do with this if it ever becomes something. It's
Right.
probably just going to be a bunch of drawings and that's it. But
Right.
but I base everything off of this idea, and it's helped me understand, uh, what is necessary to tell your story and what you can leave out, and it's given me a sense of direction in my work. A little bit of sense of style, and I keep kind of trying to push that a little bit more every time
Right.
I draw something new.
So is that a thing where, like, maybe in a sense, with a lot of the characters you're building, are you'll probably get so much handed to you from an AD perspective when you're building stuff, but if you're making your own things, are you almost writing briefs or almost like mini synopsis about characters before you're even drawing them?
With my art director, usually not a ton, because I work on a lot of Marvel stuff right now,
Right.
and so those characters are pretty well established. So
Yeah.
usually we kind of know what to go off of,
Right. Yeah.
um, for 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 that. But in my own like personal work, definitely, I sit down and think through, the background, and I'll make notes about,
Hmm.
key storytelling elements, or
Right.
different themes that I want to work into the character. So
Right. Okay.
stuff like that.
And then that, because I don't know a ton about the studio you work for, but are you working as a kind of outsourced studio for Marvel Film specifically, or is it other stuff? Or
No, it's so Kabam makes mobile games,
hmm.
and so we have a bunch of like fighter games for Marvel and
Right.
Transformers and
Okay.
Disney. So um,
Big franchises.
yeah, so um, we're a big dev studio, but obviously we work with bigger companies to
Right.
build these games.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. So, for you guys who are using the audio version specifically, just a quick shout out, because I mean, I don't know if you guys always tune into the YouTube version, but if you do specifically for this episode, we're working through an episode where Jude is going to draw or work through a character design, and then we'll talk about random stuff just now, or the more general stuff. But as the episode goes on, we'll be diving into design decisions that Jude is making for this character, and maybe break down his process as well. If you guys check out the YouTube version and you watch the demo, you watch what he's drawn at the moment. If you have any questions after the fact, because these are pre-recorded, we could do something live in the future with Jude if he's got more time.
Sure.
But also, if you guys have any questions, I'll also try to leave Jude's details below, and you can get in contact if you want to ask about anything specific, or anything that he's kind of drawn that you want to maybe flesh out more, and talk about what he's doing. Because you also have a new course that's just come out, right, with
Mhm. Yes.
IFCC. Do you want
Mhm.
to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So my course with IFCC is basically just a very in-depth breakdown of my process, and it starts with talking about design theory and storytelling elements to keep in mind when coming up with your designs, and then the next part is focusing on, like, you know bringing your idea actually into Photoshop, and sketching it out through, and exploring design through iteration sketches, and refining the idea with line art. And then the final part is the actual painting process, where you're experimenting with laying down flats and underpaint, and then the rendering process. So it's a very in-depth breakdown of designing a character and rendering it out.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So, I mean, in essence, I feel sometimes when you are breaking down a character, specifically outside of your stuff you'll do for like Marvel or clients, where, like you say, there's already an established backstory to go off, or an established prognosis of what the character is or does. When you break down a lot of these drawings, or you're starting to sketch out these ideas, are you working from? Do you have quite in-depth kind of mood boards or visual references to build off of, or do you explore more with your sketching? Do you find that you sketch initially a lot of just patterns until you find a rhythm that something that probably sticks?
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything. It's just you know collecting the right reference to kind of figure out what the design should look like. And oh, hey, hold on one second, I got a call coming in.
No, it's fine.
Hello. Hey, sorry, hold on one second. I have a package coming up.
No worries. Da, 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 da.
All right, sorry, man.
No, it's fine. It's all
All right.
good.
Yeah. Got that Death Stranding art book coming.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. So sorry.
So you were talking about reference and how you kind of feel out a character in the initial stages. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, with the projects that we work on, there's usually a lot of information to go off of. So we'll look at like comic books or the movies, stuff like that, to kind of piece together, our designs, and we try to give a nice, uh, kind of implement Kabam's visual style to it. So
Right.
yeah, it's nice that we get to work on such big IPs, but have a little bit of creative freedom to kind of play around with those important characters.
So how does that translate then to if you're doing stuff that's more like personal, like the one you're doing just now?
Mm.
Because you maybe not have as much history or backstory or kind of visual reference already. So are you following the same process, or is there something more unique for that? Or
Oh yeah, this is very much the process that I use for everything, work or personal stuff. So
yeah,
I do use a lot of 3D also, but
mm-hmm.
I think I actually want to do a course on it, but I think I need to kind of tweak it how I use it in my workflow a bit before.
Right. Is that specifically like something like DAS? I mean, I know I've been using that recently as well. Or are you using base models as well, just from other things? Or
Yeah, actually, a good friend of mine who is like a 3D concept artist had a great base model, and he gave me his to use, and I just kind of in ZBrush, I'll just pose it and sculpt over it, and
cool,
yeah,
really?
so
It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, because I think traditionally, traditionally, obviously, days gone by where it's more now. Of course, 3D is like the main tool set, but a lot of guys would draw a lot of stuff by hand, especially when it comes to characters, because maybe for ideation it might be quicker. But it's
it's all about how quickly you can do it and how comfortable you are, and
yeah,
and sometimes for me, just drawing in Photoshop is a lot faster.
yeah.
I'm still like getting used to using 3D in my workflow, so it can
Right.
be a bit of a challenge when you have a tight deadline. So,
Yeah.
but definitely in my free time, I use a lot more of it.
Right. Yeah. I think it's definitely going to be more the norm going forward. I think, like we were talking earlier about how, like Blender itself is just becoming such a powerful tool. And of course, you've got stuff like Maya, you've got stuff like ZBrush. So at this point, I think it's, I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I know there's people out there who will be, what's the word? Like a die-hard enthusiast where they're like, I want to draw everything by hand, or I want to, hand render everything, or use paints, or I don't want to go near 3D. And I totally know those people. That's totally fine. It's whatever you feel is your best foot forward, like whatever you feel is making your work look its absolute best. But I think with modern production stuff, I think especially if you're doing more studio work and less freelance, 3D is almost like it's just like a given. Like even we were having this talk the other day about how a lot of digital map painters are having to become almost like 3D environment artists at this point, because there's so much work they have to do now in 3D. So do you feel that's the same with character work? Do you feel that's like although maybe you're not specifically a 2D character artist, but that's like your main kind of wheelhouse, do you feel like 3D is still a thing that you should have in your repertoire?
I think it's something that you should definitely have a base understanding of at this point. I don't think it's necessary, but if particularly when it comes to film, it's almost mandatory in film, I would say.
Right.
Because I mean, you often are having to do multiple shots of the same scene, and or you got to quickly comp characters into other scenes, and so it definitely speeds that process up. So I think in video games there's a little more leeway. I think the deadlines aren't as tight, so you can kind of you have a little more flexibility. At least that's kind of how it seems to me. I've never worked on a film, but just knowing some people who do, and seeing kind of the difference in the time.
I think it's very much what you're saying, like, because even with games, you tend to have on more of the AAA side of it, but then your average game runs like 4 to 5 years in production, whereas a film is like sometimes less than a year. And VFX houses obviously have to scramble to get a lot of that stuff out really quickly. So I remember watching a talk with Carla Ortiz about her process at ILM, and when she was first hired there, they were kind of like, do you know how to use 3D? She was like, no. She's like, will you be willing to learn? And she was like, no. So like, I think she kind of got away with it because at the time Carla was so established, right? She had such an amazing style that the studio wanted. But I know like Pablo Dominguez and a couple other guys at ILM are very 3D heavy now on a lot of the stuff they've worked on, because it is such a great tool for concepting really quickly. I think especially even just a random example, when they worked on stuff like Captain Marvel, a lot of the spaceship design was primarily built out in 3D before they painted over, just to get the ideation really quick. And also they could, turn it in space and do multiple angles and stuff and open and shut the doors. And even I think Pablo at one point was doing like test animations. So he was like, once he built it in 3D, he was then doing slight animations where he would open the doors or open the different department or compartments so that some of the animation guys could see how the whole thing would move and open and work in the film. So I think 3D at this point is we've kind of talked about it for a long time in the podcast about how just in general 3D is now like such a tool just needed for this industry. And I think like you said,
and it gives you a better understanding of lighting, depth, proportions, and understanding
perspective, all that kind of stuff.
Understanding how camera angles and how just in general how cameras work. So it's definitely useful. In college, I was horrified of 3D. I had a terrible experience just trying to learn it. And
it's always off-putting, I think, as well, if you get the wrong kind of teacher as well. Someone's maybe not good at it,
Definitely, no, it was not a great experience at all for me in college. And so I really stayed away from it for a long time. And when I got out of college, I kind of, that's when I knew that my skill sets weren't quite kind of up to par. So I took a few courses through Learn Squared, and
Hmm.
and just kind of bit the bullet and was like, all right, let's actually just try to learn this.
Yeah. I
And
think it's very intimidating, especially when you open it. But then I think that's the same with Photoshop, right? If you've never used it and you open the program for the first time, you kind of be like, "Oh, what the hell?" But like now that I've delved, into multiple things like Blender, Maya, and ZBrush,
mhm,
it's like the 80-20 rule I talk with everybody is where like, you use 20% of the buttons 80% of the time. Once you find like a couple of shortcuts or hotkeys that work, you're just constantly going back and forward between them. So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, definitely. No, I mean, any program is a little intimidating when you first open it up,
Yep.
but yeah, no, I think sometimes you just need to find like with Learn Squared, because it's very Learn Squared is very geared towards like concept artists.
Yeah.
They dive right into what you need to know, and then the rest of the stuff that is kind of used for other stuff.
Yeah.
Um, you don't have to stress about learning that, so you
Yeah.
can kind of quickly adapt to a new program and use it in your tool set. So
Yeah.
that was a much better approach for me than it was in college. So
Yeah.
now I use Blender, I use ZBrush, 3D
Mhm.
Code, Keyshot. Um, so yeah,
A lot of them are just so affordable now, or so cheap or free. It's like it's almost like crazy to think why you. I mean, like even I think for a long time because I just purchased Jan Urschel's course
mhm,
for Blender as well that focuses on incorporating megascans. And for me, for a long time, I was like, "What is that? Why would I need to use it?" But now that I've started using it, I'm like, "Wow, this is a great resource that is very affordable and it has really great results."
definitely, yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I really like Blender, especially for like Eve,
Hmm.
or Eevee, however.
Eevee, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's you know
You
it
can change
really
your lighting in real time. Everything
yeah
moves,
it,
and
yeah, it's great. And I was the first time I tried it, I was like, I'm just gonna do a bunch of Blade Runner scenes now. That's all my artwork's gonna look like at this point.
yeah. No, I think it was one of the first things when I mean, Max was talking about it when Kit Bash launched a lot of their Neo Tokyo stuff for a lot of the kind of stuff that was inspired by Blade Runner, and people were like, "Oh God, so many possibilities to
Yeah, I
make
was like,
stuff
I'm
now."
gonna get one of those 3D Bash city
Kit Bash
kits,
stuff, yeah.
and then just Blade Runner the hell out of everything. So
Yeah, man. Yeah, there's a couple of guys who are already kind of doing a lot of that stuff, and some of the guys that I definitely folk have kind of pointed me towards are basically a lot of the guys from either One Pixel Brush or
mhm,
Naughty Dog, who are just like John Sweeney and guys like that, who are just
yeah,
like making stuff on a daily basis that just blows your tiny mind. It's
yeah,
like,
I know, it drives me crazy because it's just
yeah,
so good.
so fucking talented, man. Like
It feels like there's so much to learn these days, and like
ah,
every time you finally feel comfortable with something, someone else does something new, and you're like, gosh,
you're like, oh
I
shit,
gotta keep.
yeah.
How do I keep up? So
Yeah, I know. But then, of course, I think it's also good to just look at what you're doing and understand that you've also made great progress. And
yeah,
I think, especially because you specialize in one area, I think when people outside your area of expertise, like if character artists were doing stuff and you kind of like, oh, I know how they're achieving that effect, or
mhm,
I think it's especially when you start to learn more, you start to get to a point where like even me trying to draw more and more these days, like now when I look at stuff, I'm kind of like, I think I could draw that, like I think I could accomplish that look, and if with
yeah,
enough time and enough energy I could recreate that. But I think it's when people get to a point where they make something and you're like how how did you actually get something to look like that? It's just yeah, you
yeah.
get crazy results and then you get all bent up because I think because the process is hidden to you. You know what I mean? Because
Mhm,
you're
mhm.
like, oh, how could I replicate that? But then I think once the magic is gone and that is then revealed, you're kind of like, all right, cool. It seems less alien to me now. So
Yeah, yeah. That's I've discovered that when you kind of get a peek behind the creative curtain, it becomes less intimidating.
yeah.
I haven't been to a lot of workshops, but
Hmm.
when I went to like Massive Black and then Lightbox and stuff,
Hmm.
um, at first I remember being like, am I going to feel overwhelmed? Like, and then you start to see it, and you're like, okay, like this, I can do this stuff,
Yeah.
and and that's the thing also that I just love about art so much, is that there's so much to learn, and
Mm.
you can constantly evolve. Like it never becomes stagnant to me,
Yeah.
and I like the challenge that kind of comes with this industry.
Yeah.
You really have to be sharp, and you got to keep on top of um, you know what's
What's
being
coming
used
next?
out there, and
Yeah.
yeah, like it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And everyone now is so open and shares information, and
Mm.
uh, I I yeah, I really love you know how kind of the art
Open the industry
industry
is.
works right now.
Yeah.
So
I think there was a really good quote someone said a while back. I think it's very fit in this industry, and it's that when you get to the top, it's your duty to send the elevator back down.
definitely,
Uh,
definitely.
yeah, I think that's why so many people, especially in concept, I think, get into teaching because you want to pass that knowledge on. Because then it just like, what you're going to do, just take it to the grave, and then you're not getting this. I mean, like, you want people to also be successful like you, and you want people to also have the same thrill of creating characters or getting to work on dream projects like stuff for Marvel. So
Yeah,
um, why not
everyone
help that?
everyone kind of wants to get there, and they want to see other people get there too,
Yeah.
and that's great. Um, I definitely, remember when I was starting out, reaching out to people, and
Mm-hmm.
being, you know, surprised by how,
Kind of were.
yeah, how, you know, they took the time uh, give me some insight and
Yeah.
some tips, and anytime I have someone reach out to me, I always try to take the time to give feedback, and
Yeah. Well, it's the same even with coming on the podcast. I mean, there's probably, for as many people as I've asked to come on, there's been plenty of people who have said no, like because it's either not interested them or they thought it's not really been worth it to them or whatever. But I'm always surprised, like when we got like Scott Robertson to come on
yeah,
and
yeah,
talk to us, like I was blown away because Scott is like a legend in this industry. So the fact that he gave up an hour of his time to talk to me, I was just like so humbled.
yeah,
But then there's been people obviously on top of that we've had on, even like when we got like Matt Rhodes at one point, it was like, holy shit, there was just so many people kept coming on and talking to us. And now, 50 odd episodes later, a couple of years later, here we are. But then that would have been, I would have had no progress at all on the podcast if people had just kept saying no, like
yeah,
I'm too
yeah, for
busy or
sure.
I don't, because they don't have to, you don't, like yourself, you don't have to give up your time. You probably have like a ton of work sitting that needs to get done or something that you want to work on. But then, yeah, you're like, even, you're giving your time for IFCC or you're giving your time for here. So I feel it's a very key thing for artists to
Yeah,
have is just empathy.
and I think artists are often, I think, introverted, and it's not always necessarily because we want to be,
Yeah,
but it's just the nature of how we have to work. When you're
yeah,
focused, you can't really spend a lot of time, chatting with your friends, or
yes,
so you spend a lot of time just kind of by yourself in your head,
hmm
trying to hone in on your skills, and when we post our work, that it's how we communicate to people, and how we express ourselves, and
right,
I think we all just want um, to have that, you know our voices accepted, I guess,
yeah,
and so yeah, when I've been given the opportunity to do like the class, I was happy to do it, because
hmm
not only do I want to get my voice out there, but I want to help other people see that, oh, you know
your voice is just as valid as mine.
yeah, or that how I got to a place is so easy, and other people can do it too, and just
Right.
help people along. So
I think it's even trying to make students understand that not necessarily that it's easy, but it's no as difficult as you probably think it is.
Yeah, you're not alone in it. Like there's
Yeah,
a because it's so intimidating looking at like when you go on ArtStation, you see all this beautiful stuff and
looking at your beautiful stuff, I'm intimidated. Holy shit, dude.
thank you. uh, so many hours spent trying to get just a few pieces to look good.
Yeah,
But
but your stuff is so good. Like it's just and then I think that, like you said, it can be intimidating for people. So
yeah, but that's the thing, you know, you go on ArtStation or anything and you see all this beautiful work and you're like how am I ever going to get there? And but when you go to lectures or something and you see like you don't see all the work that goes in before you get to that final result.
oh yeah.
And I think for new people introduced to the industry, it can be really intimidating at first.
Well, I mean, it's like so two examples I've probably got. Funny enough, they're both from Korea, but there's Kim Jong Ji
Hmm.
and there's
Yeah,
a
geez.
TV Choi. I think you know Choi as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So Choi and Kim Jong Ji are both like almost like phenomenons at this point because they're just so talented. They've almost kind of came out of nowhere. I say nowhere, but like when people they're starting to get mainstream notability, people are kind of like, where these people came from.
Yeah.
Um, but the Korean art scene in itself is kind of there isn't, it's not something that we sometimes as Westerners feel a lot. But then also Kim and Choi spent so many years building those foundations, like absolutely rock solid, solidifying that stuff
Yeah.
until it was like, Kim talks about how, people talk about like his drawing abilities or even Choi, but then they probably have like cupboards in their houses back in South Korea, like just full of sketchbooks.
Hmm.
Even when I bumped in and I got to meet Kim Jong Ji at Trojan Horse
Oh yeah, yeah.
2 years ago. Oh man, that was such a moment for me, getting my picture taken with him and him
Nice.
drawing him in my book and everything. And I got to buy one of his sketchbooks. But then, yeah, like he talked about he had an injury at the time, like a callus on his finger that was like so huge because he just was drawing so much that he was almost injuring his finger. And I was like, that's like the level. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
Like
I
people need, yeah.
yeah, when I'm huge into like Japanese and
Hmm.
Korean
Yes.
animation and artwork.
Hmm.
Um, and I remember coming across Kim Jong Ji years ago,
Hmm.
and I actually sent him a message, I think on like Facebook, just being like, you know do you have tips or anything that
Yeah.
you could share with me?
Yeah.
And like I was so grateful that he actually wrote back to me and he gave me
Oh
this really
wow.
long explanation of his process
Oh my
and
god, that would be like gold dust at this point. You could probably sell that online for something.
yeah, and just like how he just kind of what he did over the years to get to where he was, and it was I was just blown away and like wow, like I really need to kick it into gear because
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that guy he
What did he say how long he was kind of like drawing or what he was doing earlier on?
I mean, he's been. I think, if I recall correctly, he's been drawing, all his life, and I think his mother,
Right.
kind of, excuse me if I get this wrong, but I think it was his parents or his mother who kind of pushed him a lot to draw. And
I think you're right there. I think his mum was an artist also. Yeah.
okay, yeah, and
Hmm.
so he told me in his reply that he anytime he goes out, he obviously observes
Hmm.
what is around him, and then he
Right.
would go home and try to draw whatever he saw from memory,
Right.
without any photos or anything,
Right.
and he's built up such a library in his head that he can kind of recall to his memories and
Right.
and draw. But I mean, the way I describe it makes it sound simple, but obviously,
Yeah.
he's
He's
had
probably spent a lot of years just building that muscle in his
yeah
brain over and
that
over again.
yeah that's a tough thing to do. And I mean,
Yeah.
for me, like sketching is kind of tough sometimes. It's like the vegetables of art to me, I guess, sometimes. So you kind of,
Right.
it makes you, everything you do is kind of based on that fundamental skills. And so
Hmm.
at times, like, I struggle to like sit there and force myself to draw in a sketchbook. So, what he
Right.
does is just, out of this, this world. It's
Yeah.
crazy how good
Just the
he
dedication, I think, and the time that they put into the subject matter is like,
yeah
I think it's almost like you're talking drawing 101 here, but even when I went to do a talk last year at Moulds University, a lot of the guys talk about like, how often should you draw a week? And, people will say things like, is like 4 hours a week enough? And, you're trying to give these guys a reality check of like, well, if you work in a studio, you're probably going to work 40 hours minimum
yeah
a week on projects. You maybe drawing for every single minute of that, but a large portion of your day you'll be drawing. So if you're drawing like 4 hours a week at this point, you know, when you walk into a full time position, then that's going to be a real shock, because if you draw for 4 hours and then want to go home, your boss would be like, well, what the fuck's happening here? I'm paying you for 8 hours a day. So
yeah
it really has to be a thing where you have to embed this into, like, even though it seems like a cool job where you get to draw awesome superheroes and stuff, like, it's still work.
yeah
You still
for
work
sure.
for a business. Still need to earn money.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's the hardest thing that students have a hard time accepting when going into like art school is, when you think of like drawing and video games, you're like, oh, this is going to be fun. This is going to be fun.
Yeah.
And then you get into the development of it and you realize like how much work and dedication people put into it. And,
Yeah.
that it's just a whole nother ballpark.
Yeah.
I think with the another thing that I love so much about game art and film art
Hmm.
is that it's such a passionate, driven industry.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that drive in you, it's very difficult to succeed in it.
Yeah.
And so you have to find a way to keep yourself motivated and to keep yourself pushing.
Which
And
is, I mean, a lot of people really usually say that's what personal projects are for, right? It's something that
yeah,
keeps you creatively fueled outside of your work.
definitely.
Yeah. I mean, even the guys I know who have worked on, like massive franchises, or are currently now working on like Marvel films,
Hmm.
they were drawing that stuff for fan art way back in the day. And,
Yeah.
they had a job where they were maybe designing ads for like a magazine for
Hmm.
something, or like, for a holiday spa or something. But then, like, eventually, you work enough hours, you do enough practice, then, somebody eventually notices your stuff, and you
Hmm.
get that dream job. But then there's a lot of years spent early on, doing work that is maybe no super fulfilling as an artist, and you need to then keep that passion, because that's the thing that drives you through. Like, when you're an hour like 75 in the studio and you still need to have another 10 hours of work on something, that's the thing that will carry you through to the next 10 hours.
Yeah.
Because then, of course, you're working on these great projects now for Marvel and other bits and pieces. But then, of course, you probably had a lot of jobs early on, that were like, designing stuff for toys, or designing things that maybe weren't specifically what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
But then those jobs got you to where you are, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I actually was a graphic designer at like a printing company
Same.
yeah, and it was the worst job ever. Like
Yeah, it wasn't great.
I was just like I was just making like menus and flyers and
Oh
stuff,
yeah,
and it was so boring and mundane. And
yeah.
I you know I actually got let go of the job too, and I was so
Same.
okay. So I was so bummed out when it happened because I was like, I'm out of college. This is the only art job I could get. I'm from a small town. Like
Yeah.
this was the only thing keeping me afloat.
Hmm.
And I was like, I don't know what I did wrong. Like I had I was definitely qualified for the job.
Hmm.
And then months later, I found out that the guy that I had replaced, I guess, wanted to come back, so they fired me and hired him back. But I was so distraught when they let me go because I was
Yeah.
like I can't even succeed at my own job, and now I'm failing at this job. So
Oh no,
I
man. But
was
then
so bummed
it,
out. But
I think it's just because sometimes it's just hard to nail in a career that early. But then I think it takes a lot of failure in those places to then build a repertoire for like how you carry yourself in work situations. But like, it's difficult when it's so early on, because you don't know the industry super well, and you don't really know how to conduct yourself or what you should be doing from day to day. So it's all a learning curve, right? But then I think also you get used to the fact that you're going to have to work jobs that you kind of hate. I mean, like we
Yeah.
talked about this a while back, where I was doing a stream with Raf, and he was saying that, you know, people moan about, like, you know, oh, you know, I've heard certain rumors about Sony or different things that you get mistreated as there's so much crunch. And he's like, you know, even I was like, you know, if you've ever worked at McDonald's drive-through, you know, like, you know, those are some of the harder jobs in the world, where, you know, like the food service industry or customer service, and especially during the pandemic, you know, like those guys were having to go to their work. So, you know, in essence, a lot of the things we get to do that are more art related are like the, not the easier jobs, but something that, like, you know, if you weren't doing this, what would you be doing? You know, you would probably be working
Yeah.
somewhere in like a supermarket or something to make
Dude,
money. So
I would be so screwed if I was not doing this for a living. I have no other talents. Like I do not know what I'd be doing. So I
yeah,
feel very lucky to be in the position I'm in.
yeah,
You know, but I mean,
yeah,
this is something that I've wanted to do since I was a teenager, and I
yeah.
remember like coming across the art of Star Wars books.
Oh yeah,
And like I was already really into art at the time, but it was a lot of traditional painting and stuff.
right.
And then I saw that, and like my mind was just like, I didn't know
Blown.
like you could do this for like you could use art in this way,
Yeah,
and it just kind of ate away at me, and I was like, I got to learn more. And I remember my parents, they bought me, I convinced them to buy me an Intuos tablet,
right,
and I think it was like Photoshop was like CS2 or something,
right.
yeah, I kind of fooled around with it for a little while as like a teenager, and then
Right.
eventually, uh, when I was getting ready to go to college, I was like, you know what, I think I'm going to go try to do concept art, and
Yeah, I think it's interesting as well when a lot of people don't really know about the industry early on. I mean, I'm a bit different from most people in this industry, where I had another full time job until I was like 28,
mhm,
um, where I worked as an engineer, and then I wanted to pursue games art specifically because I was getting art books from games and watching documentaries for like kind of behind the scenes stuff, where I was seeing the whole process and being like, "Oh, I would love to do that." Not at the time knowing like how difficult it was to be in the industry, and how much training you really need to make it in some of the studios. And I was like, you know what, fuck it, I'll leave. You know, I hated my job at the time. I wanted to do something different.
yeah,
And that was a while back now. Also, I've been through a whole degree and got my BA and stuff.
nice,
But then, you know, it has probably, you know, I think by the time, because it's getting closer and closer, but I think probably by the time that I get my first job, since I left my other job, it's been nearly like 7 years. So like it does take, like, I think people aren't really aware about like how long it can take people to get to a point where you can get paid, you know, to work on stuff.
yeah.
Uh,
I think I heard that the average, um, I think for concept artists to find a job in the industry is around 7 years.
yeah, something like that.
You
From the
know,
from the time you kind of go to school or like leave and start taking it
yeah,
seriously, like yeah,
yeah. So it's definitely, but I mean, also think about how many schools there are and how many students they churn out every year. So,
yeah,
that number is quite high compared to, the availability of jobs. So,
yes,
and then that's why pushing personal projects and picking up as many art related jobs as you can
hmm,
is important, because you need to show progress. So, and just
yeah,
anything to kind of build up that resume,
yeah,
and that's what I did after college,
hmm,
especially since I had no connections, and I was like, the only way anyone's going to notice is if I, um, you know, take the
make really
time,
good work.
yeah, to just really, really beef up my portfolio, and
Yeah.
it, panned out good for me.
Hmm.
But, yeah, I
Don't
mean,
talk about like the nights where you're sat to like 2 or 3 in the morning, like
uh,
sketching stuff, and
so many. I mean, I still do that now, but like,
yeah,
but, but yeah, at least now it's because it's stuff that like I'm really enjoying doing and just like
Yeah, you want to stay up because you want something to
yeah,
look good or
I don't have to. I'm not hustling anymore to try to get my
get
breaks.
full-time work and stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Plus at your job, because people don't realize that once the hustle's done and then you work somewhere, like those, 8 hours you spend working on something during the day is still learning. You're still problem solving. You're still, fulfilling a brief. You're still practicing your fundamentals. So, I know artists who come home at night and they're like, oh, I really need to do another 8 hours when I come home. But I'm
I
like,
know.
you're spending like 40 hours at your work
Yeah, that's me.
drawing. You know what
That's
I
me.
mean? Yeah.
It's tough.
But
Yeah,
that's good, right? Because you're still keen to learn. I mean,
yeah. It is good to step away too.
mhm,
I every there's usually a night out of the week where I don't do any work in the evening
right.
and just enjoy myself, watch a movie with my wife or play video games or something
Nice.
um, and
What are you playing just now?
right now I am playing. Well, I'm replaying Rage 2. Just
Oh, nice.
it's just a fun shooter, but I am playing that until The Last of Us comes out. So I gotta. It's holding me over. It's holding me over.
Cannot wait. Like I'm so excited.
Me too.
I
Me
was so
too.
pissed like weeks ago when I found out that some asshole leaked a lot of their
I've been dodging it. I've been dodging those leaks
uh
like crazy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I was just
Um,
so angry because we both know like how hard those people worked on that stuff
I
for
know. I know.
years.
I love John Sweeney's work, and
Oh, John, man.
I feel like with this one, his because isn't he art directing now?
I'm not 100%, but we wouldn't
Okay.
put it past them, yeah.
I feel like in this one you can see his
Influence.
yeah, you can some of the shots just really remind me of how he lights and tones things and
Right.
I mean, I'm sure the whole art team, is having a great impact on it. Not to take
Yeah.
away from them,
Of course, yeah.
just uh, you know, I love the direction that they're going in with this one. So
Seems so incredible, man. That studio's just went from absolute strength to strength.
I love how gritty this story is.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I
They're
mean,
all,
even the first one was extreme. Like the first 15 minutes of that game has you like sobbing, like
oh yeah, that's
just
true. That's
crying at
true.
a pillow, like oh
That's
my
true.
god.
That is true.
Yeah,
But I just, I like that they are not holding their punches. They're really swinging
yeah,
for it, and
yeah. Because their original trailer dropped, and I remember people like were so like up in arms about. I think it's the one where the guys like they hang somebody and then
oh
or they
yeah,
hang a woman.
yeah. And then what? Yeah, there were a bunch of articles, and like some sites they would post, "Oh, look at this amazing trailer," and then the next day they'd post an article that was like, "Why are they being so violent?" Blah blah. Like what? Pick a side?
Yeah, I've seen some movies that are worse than that stuff. I mean, so it's like yeah, it's nothing really new. But then it's like games. I think now are getting to a point where like the graphical stuff is just not an issue anymore. Like everything's getting pushed. Like even because Last of Us was one of the last things that was big on the PS3, and then even like the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 era was like a different animal. But now with PS4, and now we're getting into PS5 territory. It's like the graphic fidelity stuff. The Unreal Engine 5 stuff dropped, and everybody was losing their minds.
Yeah,
So
it was
it's just
impressive.
it's going to get to a point where like graphics are really just not going to be the thing people look at, but the experience. And I think recently I watched the Ghost of Tsushima
Mhm.
reveal.
Yes,
And,
yeah,
oh,
amazing,
dude! Like,
amazing.
see when they revealed the black and white filler at the
Uh,
end.
I
Oh, lost my
I
shit.
I thought it was genius. I thought
Oh,
that was
I'm a
great.
huge Akira Toriyama fan. So,
Yeah,
and no, on top of that, a lot of the old the Seven Samurai stuff. Like,
just such
so.
a great vibe. And I it made me think a little bit of like Westworld season 2 a bit
Oh
from
shit! Yeah, the
those.
Shogun stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was great. So
There's just I think just even the culture seemed really incredible. Just the whole aspect of the game, but like there's just so much stuff coming out now that's like you're almost just spoiled for. And then of course Cyberpunk's on its
oh,
way out as well.
I cannot that's
Wait for
like
that.
I cannot wait. It is
Yeah,
I'm so hyped and I can't bring myself down from the hype of
yeah.
that game. And
It's funny though because a lot of the events I went to the last couple of years because they're in Europe, right? So I've got like the first I think like 4 interviews I've done on the podcast were all people from CD Projekt.
mhm.
They had just shipped The Witcher at that point, so it was a big talking point. But then obviously over the next couple of years when you bumped into them again, you were like, oh, you're
Yeah.
working on Cyberpunk, right? So that must be interesting. So
I interviewed with them, and a long time ago. This was before the Cyberpunk game.
right,
And, well, I guess it had been announced, but there was, the very
yeah,
first announcement. Obviously was
right,
different than what it came out to be. But
yeah,
um, when I saw the trailer, the E3 demo that they did a few years ago, kind
the
of,
gameplay stuff, yeah.
I was like, gosh, dang it, I want to take me.
Couple hours of my life wasted in that. Like even the limited edition stuff
Oh,
that's
I've
coming out,
I've
and
watched it so many times. I can't
oh mate,
I can't get over how great
I
it
was
is.
actually I'm waiting on because I've just started using Google Stadia. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but
No.
the streaming service from Google where you can stream games to your computer. But
Oh, okay,
they,
yeah, yeah.
they were getting kind of Cyberpunk day one, so I was like, oh great, I'll not have to beef up my rig or buy any more stuff because they'll run it for me. But then they're not getting it. We're not getting it now till the next year for Stadia because they're focused on like the consoles and PCs, and I think COVID's
Oh,
kind of
okay.
slowed their whole process down at the moment. So,
Yeah,
but no, I mean, there's just so much coming out that's which is great because I think a lot of that stuff also fuels your art, right? It also
definitely.
you're like,
I think, again, like, like it's important to research and do learn new programs. I think it's helpful to also look at what's out there game wise,
yeah,
and spending time watching a movie or playing a game
right,
and is helpful.
yeah.
Not only is it an experience to do that, but it kind of just fuels that creative mind and
I think because it takes you to places and worlds that your imagination can't sometimes or wouldn't go normally. Like I mean, I think since I was young, one of the things that fueled me was we talked about like the whole Japanese Western culture, but
mhm.
my arms are covered in tattoos from games like Zelda and Mario and all that kind of stuff. But a
I,
lot of those Final Fantasy stuff, like
yeah,
that was
yeah.
like the remake came out recently, and
Mhm.
so I mean, there's a lot of that stuff that I think has fueled me for a long, long time.
Yeah, I need to play the remake. I've yeah, don't this I've actually never played a Final Fantasy game, and this is I was like I need to get this and actually like get into the franchise because I love the artwork. I've always loved it, but
yeah,
I was kind of a late bloomer when it came to video games. I didn't really grow up playing them, um, and but by the time I started, like Fallout 3 was like huge for me. That was like the
right,
first game that I really like dove into, and
right.
I'm a massive Fallout fan. And
Have you
uh,
been playing 76 as well, or?
no, they really. I was on the hype train for a long time, and
Yeah,
then when it came out and I saw how poorly it was received, I was
I
really
know.
bummed out because
I know, because I loved four. Like four was, the best experience I ever
me
had in my
too.
life was playing Fallout 4 in VR. Like
Oh yeah, is that fun?
that was an experience, and I mean, like because the VR is so real now. Like I
Hmm.
felt like I was in that game, and I felt like I was walking about those streets because it was so well adapted to the game. Like it just felt second nature, like hiding around corners and lifting your guns and shooting people, and
Yeah.
even the fact that like when you hold a sniper rifle, if you bring it up to your eye, like it
Hmm.
zooms and
Oh
everything,
yeah.
like
Okay, that's cool.
oh, it was such a good like VR for me. I think, especially when it comes to artwork as well. Like there's a whole slew of people now using VR for sculpting and
Hmm.
sketching, and but the game stuff I think is underrated because not everybody's got the ability to get a hold of stuff like the kit and the headsets and stuff. Even playing like the Vader Immortal stuff, the Star Wars games,
Yeah, yeah,
um, dueling with Darth Vader and stuff, like it just felt so intuitive and reaching out with your hand and force pulling lightsabers towards you, like
yeah.
so good. But yeah, I think the art stuff is always. I mean, before I was even looking at like when I left my job, one of the first books I bought, one of the first art books I had was the Skyrim art book, and
Okay.
then on top of that, I bought Jim Lee's art book for his DC
Yeah,
stuff at the time,
dude,
which
Jim
was
Lee.
oh,
Are you a big comic book person?
I wanted. That's what I wanted to be initially, was a comic book
Oh,
artist.
okay, yeah. I went through a phase where I thought I was going to do comic book art,
Same.
and
Oh
and like Greg Capullo, Jim Lee.
yeah,
I think.
Alvin Lee,
Yeah.
Kai Randolph, a couple
Mhm.
other guys.
Yeah. But like Greg Capullo in particular was my favorite, and
Yeah.
man, he's still one of my favorites. But
But then but that was the same for you, probably the same for you, right? Is that I learned the guys worked like 8-hour weeks, sometimes for like
yeah,
maybe 10 grand a year. And I
yeah,
was like, wow, like that's, that's probably why a lot of them are now in animation studios because, the pays and conditions are just way better. But
yeah.
the stuff that I used to open Jim Lee's book and be like, holy shit.
Dude,
Like,
his drawings are so just solid. Like
yeah.
it
But
feels
that's
so
again because he come from quite an anatomy based background because he was a med student before he was
Yeah,
an
yeah,
artist. So
yeah,
yeah. But
yeah.
then it's like I was saying, like even before like a lot of that stuff came along, like like Yoji Shinkawa and Yoshitaka Anamo, like the guys who drew like Final Fantasy and Metal Gear,
Mhm.
like those were like my heroes growing up. So and like Toriyama obviously who done Dragon Ball and stuff. So like yeah, a lot of that stuff was very I mean, like if I had to have like a dream job, it would be like working on the next Zelda for Nintendo. Like that would be my dream situation
I
working for
just
those guys.
I just got my daughter into Zelda. We're playing Wind Waker, and
Oh, nice.
she is like obsessed, and it's great.
Breath of the Wild for me is like the peak.
I need to play it so bad. I need to get a Switch.
Oh, buddy,
I
if
need to
you're a
get.
Zelda fan, I'll keep telling people that Breath of the Wild is not only the best Zelda game I've ever played, it's probably one of the best video games I've ever played in my
Oh,
life.
really? Yeah, it
It
looks
is that
amazing.
good. It is so just to the fact that you can get lost in the world. Like they literally just give you like a 5 minute tutorial, and then they just push you outside and they're like, right there you go, on you go, do your thing. Um, and the whole game you're basically spent just finding your own way. I mean, just finding your own direction. So yeah, it's worth getting into definitely,
Hmm.
and art wise as well. Like if you look about, they've done a whole talk on it not too long ago about the art direction they took for the game and bringing it back to a simplistic style. And because what they've done is when they remastered Wind Waker, they
Mm.
noticed that like the style itself was very like timeless. It was very it could hold up in modern settings. So
Yeah.
when they built Breath of the Wild, they were like, if we'd done the same thing, and made it a bit more simplistic looking, it would be a style that would last. It wouldn't just be a thing just now for the technology. It would be something that would live forever. So,
Yeah.
very, very. If you've not got any, it's a great thing to get into. The game is just incredible. So anyway, back to art, back to what we were talking about. Because, but it's great though because like it's great to know that there is an inspiration that's common. Because people always feel sometimes. I have met a lot of artists who are like, I don't play games, but I work in the game industry, and I'm always like slightly confused when I'm like, why would you want to involve in the game specifically because you're not doing it? But
Yeah.
it's good to know that influence is there.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So with actually this drawing that I'm drawing, I guess I should probably
Hmm.
explain a little bit here.
Yeah.
So yeah, usually what you saw me do is usually how I start off with characters, just like loosely trying to figure out the form and the
Hmm.
silhouette a bit. So, uh, it's very loose. It's just trying to, bring what I have envisioned in my mind and just trying to get a base idea of it out. And then usually I just, bring that opacity down and start refining over top of it,
Yeah.
like you see here. And so I kind of just clean that line art up as much as possible. It doesn't have to be super clean, but just enough that um, the majority of my planning is done. That way I don't have to constantly go back and forth trying to like getting ahead of myself painting and then
Hmm.
going back and tweaking things. And if that doesn't work, having to redo that. So
Hmm.
um, by kind of carefully going through each step, um, from beginning to end without jumping around so much, it allows me to kind of um, work a little seamlessly. So,
Hmm.
so usually um, this is the level that I bring my line art up to. So it's reading pretty good. It's still kind of messy, but not too bad. And then I'll lay in like flats, just try to find
Block it out.
what the color palette is, where the material separations are, stuff
Hmm.
like that. So also this helps with like composition too. So, but and then rendering kind of. For rendering, I always paint over top of my line art and my underpaint, and I like to do a few things. So typically, when I'm painting, honestly, my library looks massive, but I use like all
I
of
was going to say there's like a lot of brushes there.
I use all of like five, honestly.
Yeah.
I really got to get rid of a bunch of these. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I hoard them. I'm a brush hoarder. So
No, I was the same, but then I've kind of narrowed it down to about like maybe 5 or 6 brushes
yeah,
now.
yeah, I got to get rid of some of them. But yeah, like when it comes to my brushes, I love like using wet edges.
Okay.
Kind of, that overlap kind of allows you to build up your tones and mix
Oh,
and blend
okay.
them nicely in it. And wet edges kind of, it's almost like a watercolor effect, so it's hard to see, but there's like a there's like a harder edge to it, and then the
Hmm.
center is transparent. That kind of gives it nice like sharp texture to it.
Right.
Uh, so I like to use that to kind of put the way to blend, and then using transfer also. Sometimes I'll use that in combo just to
Right.
nicely blend those together. Uh, so yeah, I'll kind of just render this to. This is kind of where I'm at with this piece now, just building up
Right.
those shadows and
Hmm.
tones and highlights. So
And
yeah,
then the rest of it's just basically just kind of rendering each individual piece to the
yeah,
maximum quality.
yeah, exactly. So I'm gonna just spend some time now just painting this up.
Yep.
Yeah,
Cool. So then with this like stuff you're doing just now, and then a lot of the stuff you've done recently, I definitely feel like there is a whole, we were just talking about it earlier, about that whole cyberpunk feel. Do you feel that's like, and we talked about earlier the whole Blade Runner thing you wanted to make up. Is that like one of your biggest influences? Do you think that's like one of the things that you draw a lot in? You do a lot of personal art.
yeah. I really like um, you know the cyberpunk theme aesthetics, and
Hmm.
I'm also like mixing it with kind of a tribal uh, theme almost, or like a
Right.
post-apocalyptic blend to it. But
Right.
calling back to like Fallout and stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah,
it kind of I've realized that the more I kind of rely on my taste, the more that I get out of my own style.
right.
And I've kind of learned to not stress about what other people are doing or what tools they're using,
Right.
and since then it's just helped me to kind of um, discover my taste. And
Right.
I think that's kind of something every artist goes through. You
Hmm.
spend it's good to watch what other artists do, and as you kind of develop as an artist, um, you you figure out what you like and what you don't, and then um, in combination with like your fundamental skills and your taste, you begin to develop your personal style.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's one of these things where you try to just draw from multiple sources. I think that's when people talk about, especially students, when they talk about how one of the most common questions is how do you develop your style, and I think it's definitely just a mix of everything in your life experience. Like the games you play, the media you consume, the people you hang about with, the stuff you look at day to day. The things you paint or study from. Everything in a small measure is building that overall picture of
Mm-hmm.
how you see the world, and then eventually it culminates into like how you paint arms or legs, or how you
Mm-hmm.
paint guns or belts or human faces. Like, there might be specific artists that do it a certain way that's caught your eye, and you've been like, all right, great, I want to try this the next time. And then eventually, when you make stuff, you're like, oh, cool, like it looks like me. Like if somebody looked at your art, you would be like, oh, Jude drew that. That was his drawing. That was his style. So, um, yeah, I think it's a very common thing for people to build up a style.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good to experiment and just mess around with different styles. Um,
Hmm.
I I have always leaned a little more towards realism, and lately I find myself like trying to figure out how to approach things in a little more simplified way, and relying more on like my brushstrokes and letting things kind of stay as is without over polishing everything.
Yeah, more kind of stylized, simplistic,
Yeah,
drawn
yeah.
back looks.
Just letting like the brushstrokes kind of speak a bit. So
Yeah, I think I've definitely seen that in a lot of the cyberpunk concept stuff that has leaked. When you compare it to stuff like the previous project they worked on, which was The Witcher, it definitely seems more stylized, more simplistic, more big shapes, less detail. Which was really actually great the other week because I got an alert from Amazon that the art book for Cyberpunk comes out next month. So I'm like, oh,
does it? Yes.
yeah,
Good, good.
they're actually going to release it on the same date the game is going to come out, but the game's not coming out till September now. So
Ooh, I'm a little
um,
surprised they're going to release it before.
before September.
Well, I meant that they're going to release the art book before the.
All right, okay, yeah. The publisher had a deal, I think, with the book that it was going to come out at a certain time, and I think the emphasis was that it wouldn't affect sales of the game, so they were fine for them to
Sure.
release. It would probably build hype and more than anything. So, but then there's like an $80 version that's like a limited edition one that's got like
What?
tons of extra prints. Yeah, there's like a Cyberpunk limited edition art book.
Oh, send me
Oh,
that.
I know.
Feelings.
There's also a limited edition Last of Us 2 book as well that's coming out. So
Yeah, I with it. So
I need to buy a new shelf. I've not got enough space for all these books.
I had all my books at work, and
Right.
since the pandemic, obviously we've all been working from home, and
Oh, okay.
I just emailed them Friday. I was like, hey, can you guys like mail me my books because I missed them.
It's like being separated from like some of your kids or something. It's like it's crazy how.
I have like 2 shelves filled with books, and they're all at work.
Oh, buddy, I had like a whole like top to floor to ceiling bookcase at one point, and it was just full of stuff. Even I went to Lightbox, I bought like a lot of books from people that I only got a chance to see when I was there, like Tony Bancroft and John Polidori and all those kind of guys. So yeah, that was
much artwork.
Yeah, so good. But yeah, the whole cyberpunk art book thing's getting me going. I mean, like there's a few like key books on my shelf that I think are like the go-to. One of them's like The Art of Blizzard or Overwatch. And then the other ones are like I have a God of War book from God of War Ascension.
Yeah.
That Cecil Kim put out just before he left Santa Monica, and like they're so rare now because he only made so many before the company went bust. So like I think that book goes for like nearly $1,000 now online. But I found it in like a charity shop for like $50.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, it's one of my prized possessions. But yeah, I think art books in general are just all these things you can go to that are constant inspiration, that are things that fuel your painting or fuel how you see different things. But yeah, they're just like they're so good. Some of like I was saying, that's some of the early stuff that got me into drawing and painting like hardcore, was like looking at a lot of those books, like Skyrim, especially. Like the whole Skyrim book is like, which is also really rare as well because that only came with the limited edition game. So and it's like leather bound and stuff, but like some of the artwork in that was just like so good.
Yeah. I did you get the art book for Fallout 4?
Yes, and it's like a mammoth. It's like 600 pages or something.
Best book I've ever gotten.
Oh, buddy, like you could kill somebody with that book.
That book is heavy. And then I just got I got it last year. My favorite book that I got was the complete collector's edition of the Metal Gear games.
Oh, me too. With the 2 books and
Yeah.
the folder. Yeah,
That was.
I think. Oh, that's one of my like. And then I have like all the Zelda books, basically like the encyclopedia, the compendium, and then like the Breath of the Wild art book. Just so much good stuff in there. Like so many amazing drawings, and that was one of the highlights definitely from THU 2018 was they got one of the artists, I forget the guy's name specifically, but he was one of the key artists on the Final Fantasy 15 team.
Yeah.
And seeing some of his process into how he painted and stuff, it was so beautiful, some of his stuff. But yeah, it is good, one of these things when you bring inspiration not just from like what's sitting on your screen most days, like, but the ability to actually physically sit with a book and open up and really delve into it, because like you only get so much online. Like you get almost just like a taste of like what they've done on the project. But then with the art books, like they really just let it all just hang out. They fill pages and pages of drawings, and like you said, the Metal Gear thing, the 2-book thing, like
Yeah.
my God, the Yoji Shinkawa just like blows my mind every time about how. And it's funny when he gets interviewed and he talks about like almost like he's like no important to the franchise. He's like, oh, you know, I drew some stuff and it turned out okay. But like, you know, I remember the interviewer was being like, but you're Yoji Shinkawa. You must realize how important your art is to the world. But then again, it's like the humble brag for a lot of the artists. It's like, you don't really see yourself as like the superstar. You just see yourself as like, you know, a cog in the wheel where, you know, you're just helping the team and it's a team effort.
Yeah,
But
you
then
know,
there's,
and I don't even know if, anyone really wants. I don't think it's for any artist really about the fame. It's more just about,
yeah,
being able to find your niche and hope
yeah.
that speaks to someone out there. So
Yeah, yeah. Which is the greatest compliment if somebody's like, "Oh man, your work, you know, inspired me to do this," or like, even when I get guys, you know, messaging me about the podcast and be like, I think years ago, was it last year or the year before? There was like a 19-year-old girl was like, oh, I'm going to actually go to art school because of your podcast. I was like,
oh
oh
wow,
my
that's
god,
awesome.
like wow. So like, yeah, no the fame or anything, but the fact that I'd help somebody, you know, and
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no,
yeah,
it's good to know every once in a while that what you're doing,
is making a
and
difference.
yeah, inspired someone to do something too.
Yeah. Is there anybody who you still look up to like an art hero? Is there people that like artists specifically that you still, you know, we talked about Kim Jong and a couple of the guys, you know, the kind of the Japanese guys or whatever, but is there anybody like a kind of maybe hit list of people that you still draw like a lot of like hardcore inspiration from, or
Um, yeah, I like a lot of the artwork that comes out of Respawn a lot.
right?
I li- Seeing the sort of the work that was done for Titanfall and Apex Legends.
Yeah.
They have some
And
really
Fallen
interesting.
Order as well, like the Star
Yeah,
Wars game
yeah,
was
it was a
really, really good.
great game, great game.
Yeah.
And then uh, uh, I'm a big Six More Vodka fan.
Yeah.
Those guys are, you know, that's a
As we all
stack.
are.
Yeah, those guys. That's a stacked studio. Those artists are all very
Yeah. That's the
talented.
elite of concept artists right there. That's the
Yeah, yeah.
best of the
So,
best.
yeah, um, yeah, and then
It's a
back.
tough question because you probably don't think about this stuff every day, right?
Yeah, you kind of the more you get into the industry, the more you kind of just you learn to appreciate um, everyone's work for what it is. So
Right.
but yeah,
So is there any kind of dream studios that you think you would want to try and work on a project at one point? Like you talked about, you know, Respawn and Apex and stuff a couple of times, and I know you done a like one of the first. I never even say this to you, but one of the first pieces I actually ever saw yours was the Death Stranding inspired. You
oh
know, the
yeah,
Skull guy that you done.
yeah.
Yeah. So is that
Uh,
like is Kojima like and Respawn like some of your kind of accolades you'd love to try and get in here? Or?
definitely.
Yeah.
I like that near future sci-fi tech kind of look. So
Right.
it would be
Yeah.
fun to work on something like that for sure.
Makes a lot of sense, especially with the way I think Death Stranding was received because it almost felt like it was a mixed bag. But when you really look back on it, like there was so many people that were like just blown away with how incredible that game was, and
Mhm.
I think even just like the art style, the story, the way it was all just put together, it was like such an amazing project. And I think it was great because I think he did open his studio up. Unlike a lot of Japanese studios, he did open it up to a lot of Westerners to work on the project. So, because even like, you know, we were talking about earlier, like my dream project would be, you know, working at Nintendo on the next Zelda game. But
Yeah.
they recently, I think in the last 6 months, they had a position open for the new Zelda game. But some of the specifics were like you had to live in the Kyoto area and you had to speak fluent Japanese. So it's like you would really be looking for. I think they're really looking for a lot of local residents of Japan, which sucks sometimes because I know, you know, there's so many Westerners I know that would love to work on
Mhm.
some of those projects. But I think in Japan, one of the biggest studios that takes on a lot of Westerners is Square Enix. They tend
Oh
to have
yeah, yeah. And
a mixed bag of people.
and I believe don't they, I think they have a studio in Montreal. So
I think they do. Yeah, I think they have something in Canada. I'm pretty sure they do. Although I don't know specifically what games they work on there. But probably, yeah, they probably would have their hand in working on some of the Final Fantasy stuff for
yeah.
some of the bigger franchises. But yeah, I think it's always like these bigger studios is like a dream for a lot of people, especially like Respawn because that whole studio's. kind of rose from the ashes of Infinity Ward when they disbanded, and Jason West and Vince Zampella, when they kind of founded that studio, was a big talking point at the time, and they've done great things since then. So, and like you said, Fallen Order was like such a great accomplishment.
Yeah. They were like working on that game before even before working on Titanfall.
Oh wow! Really?
They had like a small number of people working on it, and then
like a whole pre-production thing.
Yeah, and I guess it eventually got greenlit or something. I believe that was the case. I think I watched the
documentary.
Yeah, I watched a documentary on it, and I think they had mentioned that in there. So
yeah, I can never mind if it was specifically because I know I had a friend that worked at Visceral.
Okay.
Who were working on was it 1313 at the time? And then when that got canned, I think that became Fallen Order.
Oh,
I think that might have been it. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that was somebody probably correct me in the comments. But and then I think that transferred to Respawn early on. But then I don't know the specifics. But yeah, but whatever the case was, they done an amazing job. It was one of the, I think for me, it was one of the best Star Wars stories, I think. And I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Like, I'm an absolute Star Wars nut. So,
me too.
Covered in tattoos for Star Wars. But yeah, like that story was really well done, I think, and the whole game was really well presented. Like the combat and everything, it was just a whole kind of package for me. It felt really good. So,
yeah.
Which was interesting for Respawn because they hadn't at that time really done anything like that specifically. Yeah. So yeah, it was a really good success story for them to come back out and be like, check what we can do. So
especially after there have been so many, promising Star Wars games that never, came out. So it was great to see a studio that, still it didn't have a ton of major IPs under their belt, kind of come out swinging with that one, and they did such a great job with it. I mean, not saying that they're a small studio or anything, but
no. But I think compared to other studios, they
were still fairly, some of their projects were still pretty fresh. So so I was ecstatic when I saw that game come out of there. So
nice. You were just using. Oh no, on you go.
Did you sit in on the Respawn panel at Lightbox last year?
No, I know. Unfortunately, it was a case where I tried to get to a lot of stuff, but I think I just had so much time just talking to people and catching up and meeting people I hadn't met before, and then a couple of times I had to help Rafway's table if he was going to a panel or he was doing stuff. So
yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to quickly ask you about this tool you're using because I don't think I've ever seen this in Photoshop. This is
Lazy Nezumi. Yeah, this is Lazy Nezumi. It's just a little plug-in. It's like $30, I think, and they give you constant updates. But it's basically like has just a bunch of useful like drafting tools. And sometimes I'm very picky and I need to be precise, otherwise I'm So yeah, it's just really useful and like. Let's see. There's even like perspective grids and stuff in here. So
if you want to get the actual, bang on like die-hard lines that are in the right perspective, and
just lots and lots of useful stuff like this. So
Lazy Nezumi. I'll need to remember that one. That looks like a really interesting tool.
Yeah, I love it. So it's a very useful tool.
Fantastic. So again, at this point, with a lot of your design kind of silhouette done for this character, is this just a case of rendering now, or are you still figuring some stuff out?
This is everything. I have everything down. I know where this is going at this point. So at this point, I'm just honing it all down to a nice, neat polish. So
where do you? Because this would be something for me as well that I recently, when I was doing my most recent painting, was about the thing I felt I lacked, especially was material rendering. Like specifically like steel, clay, stone, like getting that to look like accurate. How did you kind of approach material rendering when you were studying all of that stuff? Was it just copying or?
Yeah, lots of like little, studies, and then, lighting is really what sells it. So for me, at least, understanding, how light, kind of reflects on metal versus, clothing,
Wood and stuff. Yeah.
yeah, and just kind of familiarizing yourself with those. And like, I
Right.
mean, you can see like my technique between the clothing or like the metal on this arm is really the same, but
Hmm.
it's just those minor little details, added details that kind of,
Pop it out.
yeah, will help push your idea a little bit more. So
Yeah.
I just
I
kind of
love
want
that.
to indicate like what's going on. It's,
Yeah.
this
I
isn't
mean, I
really
love.
what like metal looks like, but it's enough detail and enough of it imitates how metal would reflect just enough to kind of give that idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say like your whole arm like looks like it's really well thought out. Just like the mechanics of it. I feel like something also that takes a lot of time to study is just like if you were building a cybernetic arm, like how that would fit together, like
Hmm.
where the pipes would go, where the joints would hinge, what parts would be covered, which wouldn't. Like I feel that's a whole design process in itself, right? It's a whole thing of like figuring that's is that also something that you spend time. Is that research from like just observing playing games or something, or have you really looked into mechanics of arms or?
Yeah, I have like a Pinterest board that I save of just like hard surface details. And
Right.
so, uh, you know, over time I've built up a, just studying those details or like photo bashing them in. Like I've
Right.
begun to have an idea of how mechanical pieces kind of fit together.
Right.
So yeah, it's helpful. And actually for like this area,
Mm-hmm.
let's see if I have it. So here are like my photos that this is like my mood board basically.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so often like I try to like paint everything to about like 80%, and
Right.
so when I get kind of lost a little bit or I just can't quite get over the hump when like designing something, I'll bring in a photo like this, and and well, there's no color here, so I don't need to take that out. But I like to just boost the contrast almost so that it almost reads like line art,
Okay.
and then I'll just put that on like a multiply, and and
Ah,
basically
okay. Right.
just put it in over top of my design, and that way this way, because the problem that I have with photo bashing is that it takes away from your visual, like your creative language when it comes to like your brushstrokes and everything. So,
Right.
but using photos can be helpful, obviously, when like pulling minor details. So when I
Mm-hmm.
like get some ideas going, that's when I'll do this to kind of just get some information that I can start kind of build off of. So
Right.
yeah, that this way, like I don't lose any, I don't lose my uh, the brush quality and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Build on.
Yeah. It's no really overlapping and making it very jarring to look at or anything.
Yeah, exactly. So this is kind of how like I will approach things. So like this elbow area, kind of
Mm-hmm.
when I was painting this on earlier, like back here, you know,
Yeah.
it looks a little different here,
Right.
and I was like, well, like this looks cool, but it doesn't really, this doesn't look functional to me. So
Right.
I was like, I gotta like rework this a bit. So I went back
Right.
and kind of when that happens, that's when I like to like use photos occasionally and rework
I've
them.
got two questions for you, which will maybe be interesting or life changing for you. But are you using something called PureRef at all?
No, no.
Oh God,
Oh,
PureRef is a game changer. It's like it's an app developed by an artist, but you basically download the program and then fire photographs in it, and then set the window tick and it always on top. And what you do is you can overlay it on your Photoshop file and just flick through your reference, and it always stays on top. So if you're drawing something, you can constantly pull for. I mean, like at this point, you might not need to use it, but A lot of the guys I know, where I got it from originally was a lot of guys were using the ILM, and it's they'll fire the reference into this. You can just like grab up like 50 photos and fire it into the file, and then just flick through them and have them just on top all the time, so you can pull from.
Dude, okay, yeah, I need to look into that then.
I'll send you links.
Yeah,
also, there's a really good Chrome extension called Pin Down that Raf told me about, and basically what happens is when you go on Pinterest, when you search things, say like hard surface design, for example, rather than searching pins, you can search boards. Or you can do either, but like if you go to boards and there's like maybe like a board with like 1,000 pins, Pin Down's an extension where if you click a button, it just downloads all those photos into one folder.
Oh, okay.
So I just use that for like if I want like a basic like stuff in like 50 photos, and then I just use one click and it just gives me all the photos on my hard disk, and then I throw them into PureRef and then flick through them.
Yeah, definitely send me this because I just have like folders and folders and it's like folder exception for me.
Yeah. There's a lot of people sometimes do the thing where they drag a photo into Photoshop and make it its own window and then size it down and stuff. But PureRef's been a game changer, I think, for a lot of artists recently, because especially the fact that it just like always stays on top. So no matter how much you're painting, you can just keep looking back into the photo and then use your left and right keys to flick through photos and get another bit of reference. So
okay, that sounds useful.
Yes, very good app. So for you now, like like we talked about, your early career and a lot of things you've done, and of course now what you're doing with the studio. So what's like some of your future goals? I mean, I know you've probably maybe done one of them with doing the course for IFCC. Do you also have an art book, or is that something else you want to do? Or
it's funny you mentioned that. Yeah, actually, like we were talking about earlier about how like I base all my recent work is based off an idea, and I would love to do a book with this idea.
Right.
I have story beats plotted out, and that I kind of want to illustrate and kind of present it as like more of like a pitch, basically. But it will be like an art book of this idea that I've expanded upon. And, I whether this happens one day or not, I don't know, but that's what I would like to do.
Yeah. I think it's also one of these things where you're trying to balance, like, I mean, from the sounds of it tonight, it sounds like you've got a young family in the background. So
you
have to balance that, and then your full-time work and thinking about your next step. And so, there's a lot of things you always want to do, but then of course, time and money and, opportunities. So, there's always makes me a bit envious when I see a lot of these guys who are, like they have like 3 or 4 art books out, or they have
me too.
So many tutorials and stuff, and
I want to do it so bad, but and then like I've been freelancing a lot more recently, so sometimes that kind of puts.
So you're doing work outside of just the studio stuff you're doing as well.
Yeah.
Right.
So
is that also like game related, similar kind of stuff you're doing at the studio, or is it a lot different? Or
more game related stuff usually.
Cool. So I mean, is that so? Your weeks are pretty packed, right? You're full time in the studio, however many hours a week, and then you're coming home at night and you're freelancing, and then try to get some time with the kids and the family.
Yeah. My days usually are like I get up and start working around like 9, and then I work till about like 5 or 6, and then spend the evening with the family doing that, and then around like 8:30, 9ish, I get back to it, and I start working probably till like anywhere between like midnight or 2 in the morning. So
wow.
Yeah.
That's got to be brutal with like a young family as well, because the kids will be up at like crazy hours and stuff, or first thing in the morning. So
my daughter was born right before I got out of college, so that's when I knew that I really needed to be like if this was going to be a viable career and I was going to be able to
now was the time
have a living doing this, provide for my family, that I really needed to step it up. My daughter, it was kind of was a big push for me to get my self together and
Make
to
it
hone.
serious about what you were doing. Yeah.
Yeah, just hone in on my skills, and I feel fortunate that I've been able to make a living doing this, and that people
Yeah.
are interested in what I'm doing. So
Yeah. I think it's a very driving motivating factor in a lot of people's life is like, having a young family or kids or the need to provide for somebody. It's always something that's at the back of your mind and something that you need to think about. If you're going to have a family, that you're going to make sure that you've got something that's viable, that's going to be able to
yeah,
stay in a mortgage or have a career with. So,
yeah.
is that a thing where like, would you eventually want your kids to get any art? Do you think that she would want to be an artist also, or?
She, it's funny. She this morning, she told me she wanted to be an illustrator for books, and
Oh,
we going back to Zelda.
right.
She's very into Zelda right now, and
Good.
she I printed out a bunch of black and white
Or the color and stuff.
coloring stuff of
Yeah.
Zelda just for her, and she was so excited when she saw it. And she normally she doesn't really gravitate towards art, and I don't get pushy about it because I want her to discover it on her own and enjoy
Of course,
it.
yeah.
Because obviously, since it's something I do,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to force it on her. And
Right.
but so this past week I printed out these pictures, and she went crazy just coloring these in. And this morning I woke up. She had gone up early and had like stapled them together and like written like out a story in them and to show me. And she was like, I think I want to be an illustrator. And it was really awesome. I was really excited. So
that's good. I think it's also interesting because I think as a parent, you want to try and pass on some kind of knowledge or help them grow as people because you want to see them succeed in life. And
yeah.
you're always like, if they want to do something that you're not directly involved in, then you're almost like, well, how do I facilitate that help? How do I help them grow? But then when it's art related or it's something you're already doing, you're like, oh, great. Well, I know already, like, how to help them in that area. Like, I've got some idea of like things they could do or places they could, learn. Or, I know when we interviewed Scott Robertson, almost, I think, was it nearly 2 years ago now? Scott talked about how his dad, I think, I'm not remembering it specifically, but I think he was an architect.
Oh yeah.
And he would make Scott and his brother like fill a sketchbook like every month. Like he would hand them a sketchbook and be like, draw, make stuff. I can never remember if he talked about if it was like almost forced, but I know that he says like, without that kind of training early on, like it would have been difficult to find his feet in the art world later in life. So yeah.
Yeah, my parents were always very supportive of me being in the arts.
Right.
Neither of my parents are really artistic, but
Mm-hmm.
but they definitely, when I showed an interest, they put me in art classes. They put me in painting classes.
Right.
And when I was interested in going to college for animation and stuff, they helped me out with that. So
yeah. Oh, that's good. I mean, I think especially when I've met a lot of artists in my life, it's always a mixed bag. Like you either get it's almost just two extremes. Like either they had no idea and were horrified that you wanted to be an artist, or they were like, oh great, and if you want to do that, that's fine, and we'll help support you and stuff. So
yeah, it's definitely a mixed bag. I think that stigma is going away though now with the popularity of video games at this point.
Yeah,
like it
and
blows,
movies and comics, and yeah,
it blows my mind that people make a living off of playing video games right now.
Oh yeah, like Twitch and stuff or esports, and
it's so crazy to me. Like, I mean, it's great for the industry, but like I never would have imagined like there being sports teams and based on games and that are
League of Legends and stuff like that,
that are sponsored and are making millions of dollars.
That's like even for a lot of people who make either like League of Legends style games or like the Counter-Strike stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If they're making things like that, the esports component is like such a major thing for them now because I remember when I played Rainbow Six Siege back in the day, like even in its first incarnations, like it was a strange concept, I think, the 5-on-5 thing, but it was interesting how they posed it, and then to almost thrive that community back into existence, the whole esports thing was built out of that because they started hosting tournaments and getting people involved. And I think it's becoming more of a major factor now in games, is like, how can we market a sport out of this, or how can we maintain, the longevity of playing this game for months and months? What's going to keep people coming back? And I think this is definitely a factor. So they were even talking about, because of the pandemic, like, you couldn't have regular sports, so people were like turning in to, like, esports enthusiasts, because it was the only way they could really get that fix, right? Because there was no football, there was no soccer, whatever. So people had to start thinking, like, outside the box of, like, how are we going to get our fix on, sports or tournaments or anything like that. So the esports crowd were getting more and more popular, basically.
For sure. Yeah, no, it's this whole I think, like, video games are up like 30% this year, just because of the pandemic and everything. So
yeah, I mean, you look at the money they bring in compared to Hollywood, it's like,
oh yeah,
it's almost 10 I mean, we're where we are in Scotland, down the road we have Rockstar Games, and they are responsible for Grand Theft Auto, and GTA 5 is still the most successful entertainment thing ever.
I know, it's crazy what that game has done.
Yeah, so much money. Like, I think at this point they've got a license to print money. They just have so much cash because the money they've.
I'm blown away by what Riot has done. I mean, they've survived off of one game for so long, and
and now they're expanding in the whole. Like, my buddy, who, when I went to Riot, Lydia, shout out Lydia, she's an environment artist there, and she couldn't when I was even there back in September, she couldn't talk about the project she was working on, but it was Valorant, so it was the Counter-Strike first-person shooter kind of thing they've built in there. But then, like, they've done such amazing work with that now. And then
I love the art style for that game.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, one of the guys, Hicham, like, I think I'm butchering his name, but he was one of the lead character guys there as well. And some of the stuff they were doing, they kind of got a sneak peek at Lightbox. It was so incredible. But then it was funny when I talked to them, we were just kind of sitting having lunch in the quad, and Bright, so incredible. But like, they were talking about, like, oh, what games are you playing recently? And I was like, I kind of jumped between Rainbow Six Siege and Overwatch. And then they were kind of like, oh yeah, I think what we're working on at the moment might interest you. Then I was like, oh, okay. So, and then you look at Valorant now, and you're like, all right, I can see where they were going with that. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I love the artwork. I hope there's an art book for it. If
yeah, I was always wondering that as well, because it's one of these things where I know a lot of, like, when a game has a release, it gets an art book, but then this was like, it's one of these persistent online worlds where it will change, and I'm wondering, because it took Overwatch, I think, a couple of years to get something out book-wise, because
I bought that book so fast when the Overwatch one came out.
Oh, buddy, I've got the limited edition, the big bad one with the prints and stuff.
Yeah, did you? Okay, yeah, I have just the regular one, but but yeah, no, I love the aesthetic behind Overwatch.
Yeah, it was so, I think, especially for Blizzard, fresh at the time.
Yeah, I was like,
remember what
a movie with after these shorts, I was like, just make
yeah, like, every time. Remember when we were getting David Long, shout out to David, when we were at Blizzard, when we were getting our tour, they were talking about the Overwatch cinematics, because David's on the cinematic team, and he was saying about, they've tried to, basically, that's what they're trying to do, is make these short Pixar style films with every release that covers some kind of topic, whether it's loss or brotherhood or whatever, PTSD, like the Bastion short, but then everything they've done so far, I've tried the latest one they done that came out, I can't even it might have been it was Overwatch 2 reveal, it was the trailer for that. So
okay,
but yeah, when they fight the massive big robot in Paris, but like, it's but yeah, their shorts are, I think, one of my favorites still to this day is it's the one that takes place in Mexico, where Soldier 76 takes on the gang.
Yeah. I liked Bastions a lot. I like Diva. I know that's such that feels like the go-to for a lot of people, but I really like Diva.
Oh yeah, I love Diva as well. Like, Hannah's she's my waifu. 100%.
Is, like, I'm a big fan of a lot of games, but that I don't even really play, and I always buy, like, the artwork of, and like,
I'm
like
still,
I love
yeah.
Overwatch. I love the aesthetic, and but I get wrecked in Overwatch. I cannot play it at all.
Yeah, I can kind of hold them on. I'm not terrible, but yeah, there's some guys in there that are just so good. But I'm still saving up for that. They have a Diva statue in the Blizzard store.
Oh yeah,
It's like you can buy it. It's like almost 2 foot tall, but it's like her sitting on her mech.
nice.
And I'm like, it's like $400 or something. I'm like desperate to get it. So, but for the moment, it's just
For anything with mechs, and I'm like, all right, I'm in. You got me.
oh yeah. It's funny though because I only have a couple of like half decent. I've not really had time the last couple of years because I've been working as a student. I've not got a full time job anymore, but I have a couple of statues on my desk. But the best one is when I was helping Raph at Lightbox. He gave me one of his Nova statues
Oh
that
nice.
he'd made. Oh, buddy, it sits next to my desk every night now, and I'm like, oh, such a good beast statue. So, yeah. So I mean, like, well, I think what we'll do is we can kind of hit it on the head here, and maybe come back to this as like a two-parter. We can maybe revisit this or come and do another character or something. But I think we've got a general aesthetic about where you're going and how you've kind of accomplished this, and
Yeah,
where
cleaning it up more is just I'm kind of just it's just noodling away at this point. So
I think a lot of character stuff, or even just paintings in general, that is the aesthetic, right? Is that you will probably spend a good initial period building that shape language up in those silhouettes, and then after that it is just materials, lighting, building.
That's always the thing. It's funny because often I get a lot of questions about like my rendering and like how do you do that, or is this a 3D model? Sometimes I get people ask me if I use 3D, and
right,
and it's obviously you've been sitting here watching me draw for a little bit, but it's just that repetitive nature of building up your colors with every brushstroke and
right.
Adding those little hints of lighting and stuff. So and voila, easy peasy.
Yeah. Just like that, so simple. But yeah, no, I think it is one of these things where if you're so good at something, sometimes people always want to take something away from you in some respects and be like, oh, you used photos, or oh, it's 3D and they've posed it. And
yeah,
I think to almost make them feel better about the process, that they're not wanting to find it something like, oh, just render this all by hand, because then you're kind of like, oh, how did you do that? But like we were talking about earlier, like breaking down the process. But I think, like you said, it's just having the time to noodle away at something and just make it extra shiny in certain parts. So
it's just about being self-motivated and just pushing yourself to get to that final result.
Yeah, 100% agree. So yeah, I mean, if anybody's stuck about for this long, thanks for tuning in and listening to me and Jude talk. I mean, I know we deviated slightly about some game stuff, but then again, it's one of our, for me, and I think and for you, one of our bigger influences in the industry, and I think it's good to have that stuff as well, because that also fuels your passion. So yeah, if you have any questions for Jude, I'll leave all his details below. You can get in touch, and if you want to ask any questions about the course or any of his process, I'm sure he's always open to feedback. Sure. And yeah, definitely.
I'm always open to giving people feedback or answer questions. If anyone has it, just reach out to me on any of my social media.
Cool, fantastic. Thanks again to yourself for giving up your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man. This was good.
Yeah, man, really appreciate it. I'm glad you were able to sit a bit longer and noodle through some stuff and break down your process. I'm sure somebody who'll watch the episode will definitely find it interesting and definitely take something away from it. And then yeah, again, if you're listening to this at any point and you want to check out Jude's work that he done during the stream, just hop onto the YouTube channel and you can watch the video back where he kind of breaks down his process. And then also, wherever you are, make sure you like the podcast, give it some feedback, give it some love, some subscribers. We also have a Discord, which is down below. I'll leave it in the links and you guys can join. We've got a community there of just over 100 people at the moment that usually post up work or give feedback. So if you're looking for a small community to interact with when you're starting out and you want to just get some basic feedback, there's a lot of people there of mixed varieties, some 3D artists, some 2D. And then yeah, that's pretty much it. Check back in with the podcast. We're going to have a couple more really good guests coming up, and yeah, thanks again to Jude and for all you guys listening. And yeah, we'll see you all later. Thanks again for tuning in. Bye, guys.